And as always, before we begin, we'll spend a minute in silence to invoke the presence of the Supreme Being. So welcome all of you once again. And as you can see on the screen, we have reached the episode number 102. And the value for today is accountability. We call it Jawabdehi, a bit similar to responsibility in English, and in Hindi we call it Jawabdari. Well, so I will stop sharing the screen, and we are so fortunate that we have with us a very dear senior sister, Sister Denise Lawrence, who's joining all the way from south of France. So thank you, Sister Denise, for joining. And it's always a pleasure to listen to your talks. And thank you. So before I pass it on to her, as always, I'll just introduce her in a few lines because she's not new for us. And then we'll recite a poem on her and accountability. So it's almost been exactly now 15 years. Mr. Dennis joined in 1974. So wish you a golden jubilee in Brahma Kumaris. And she is one of the first students of Dadi Janki. And after that, between 1975 and 2000, that period of 25 years of her journey, she served as a coordinator for centers in various parts of the world, Germany, Canada, and USA. And she's also featured on multiple television programs on Raj Yoga and on also another 100 television programs on addiction recovery. And she also served at the Brahma Kumaris International Headquarters in Mount Abu from 2001 to 2007. And we really are indebted to her for her extremely fantastic contribution in the form of 10 textbooks of the diploma programs in value education and spirituality, which is being conducted through the education wing of Raj Yoga Education and Research Foundation. And this course, as we speak, is being offered at 8 Indian universities. And she also served from 2007 to 2010 as a national coordinator for the BKs in Canada. So what I like about Sister Denise is a very simplistic way of taking us into the depth of any topic. So let's start with today's value and the poem as well. So today it's on accountability. So in today's world, which is full of so much of unreliability, where people have forgotten their true innate capability, Sister Denise shall guide us on how to develop accountability so that we regain back our lost and forgotten ability, which in turn helps us to develop within the flexibility and return to the soul's original nature of agility, thereby connecting to the Supreme's sustainability, who exactly knows what's my suitability. In today's scientific world, which is full of plausibility, where natural calamities at any point are a big possibility, and people deal with each other with a lot of hostility, let's strengthen ourselves by regaining our lost spirituality and from all the guidance of our dear Sister Denise on accountability. So with this, I would now request Sister Claudia to please officially welcome her with flowers. Over to you, Sister Claudia.
Om Shanti, good morning, good afternoon for you, and then good evening for many of you. Yeah, it's a quite nice topic, and then I was very happy to hear that you are going to speak about this one, because you are a soul that we can count with in many, many different ways. When we are opening a center, when you need a very good speaker, whatever we need, we can count with you. So you are very good to be the speaker of this value. And I like to hear from you why sometimes we count with someone and that one fail to us. So you must have lots of this experience. So I'm really looking for that, to know what happened to that soul, that something happened to them, so we can understand more what is happening. So I'd like to welcome you with a bouquet of flowers, and this with lots of love we give to you, and we just
Thank you so much. Beautiful.
thank you for being with us today.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Sister Claudia. And just a quick housekeeping instruction. So all of you can just click on the interpretation icon. We have almost 6 to 7 languages. Please select the room which you want to listen to in. The talk would be for, say, the first around 50-55 minutes. And then please start sharing your questions with me in the chat box, which I can ask Sister Denise. And then we'll have a closing meditation after that. So thank you. And over to Sister Denise. All yours.
Thank you very much, Dr. Manoj, and my sisters, and to our translators and everyone who's with us today. Accountability is really, I think, a very important value. It is actually a value in the sense that values are determined by the order in which you give importance to something over something else. And recently I did a talk about conscience just a couple of days ago, maybe yesterday. And conscience and accountability are very connected. Accountability means that you understand that you will be called to account for what you do and how you carry out your responsibilities. And Sister Claudia was asking about reliability. And I think it is indeed very connected. If a person expects to be held accountable, they will make sure that they are reliable and that they do what they say they will do. And if something gets in the way of it, they will inform in good time. So it's all about our interaction with other people in the context of family, of our professional responsibilities, the wider society. And accountability is also something I think that's very important when you're engaged in a spiritual practice, because there is this aspect of being accountable to God. And this is something that not very many people have much information about. So I will share a little bit about that. Maybe I'll do that first. Our relationship with God varies at different times through our journey through eternity. There are times when a person knows God very clearly, very well, and interacts and engages, but there are far more times when a person doesn't know. A person is perhaps having faith, belief in God, but doesn't really know. And there are also times when a person really does know. So this aspect of accountability is very important for those who do know. So what does it mean to know or to not know? To know God is connected with having access to all the information about the Creator and the creation. And this information is available, and once you understand it and you engage yourself in a relationship with the Supreme Being, then there is also the understanding, which is there even among those who don't know. Most people who believe in God, they think that God is watching and very aware of what you are doing, saying, thinking, feeling at any given moment. And it's very true. So accountability in that respect means also something like fidelity, loyalty, being true. You say, okay, God, I will live with you, I will live in your remembrance, and I will act according to what you are recommending for how to live one's life in relationship with God, in relationship with the self, and in relationship with other people, institutions, your nation, the world, nature. We are in relationship with all of these things and more. And accountability also brings us in contact and in the context of the philosophy of karma. So when you study with God, you're also learning the philosophy of karma. And in a simple way, the philosophy of karma means that whatever you do, say, think, feel, or fail to do, say, think, feel, will produce an equal and opposite return. And this is the same in the science of physics as well. In terms of your relationship with nature, your relationship with nature is also your relationship with your physical body. So that means you'll think of yourself as a spiritual being who is dwelling in a physical body through which you interact with people, with places, with objects, with nature. In your mind and heart, you also interact with the Supreme Being. And that interaction presupposes that you understand the difference between what's correct, what's incorrect action. And you strive to be accurate. So if you are accurate, it also implies that you are aware that you're accountable for what you do. That means sooner or later, you will be called to account. On such and such an occasion, you did such and such a thing, which was against your conscience, which was against right action, etc., etc. And so that was a mistake. And there are consequences, and the consequences are that you have to pay. And when you expect to be held accountable, you're attentive, you're careful, because why would you do something for which you have to pay? That's not meaningful. In many ways, the relationship between yourself, people, God, nature, is to do with coming into fortune. Every time you do a right action, every time you do an extremely powerful, pure action, there is a great deal of benefit that accrues to you yourself and to others who are around when you do that. On the other hand, if you're in a situation where you do something knowingly that is wrong, in the sense that it's against the principles of the philosophy of karma, it is against your agreement, it is against the moral precepts that you live by, then you will be called to account, and you will go into debt, you will go into loss. So the idea behind a meaningful, purposeful life in which you expect to be held accountable is that you operate with a view to being accurate in your dealings, and at the end of your life's journey, you are filled with riches of pure karma, of having applied the qualities, divine qualities, virtues, higher principles. You have shown yourself to be a person that others would follow the example of. People would say, yes, we can trust this person. This person is reliable. This is a person of good character. This is someone who we can feel really good about. Just a second. And when we are aware, then obviously we would not go against any of these principles. And so you have to really look at yourself and see, okay, how do you live? What is the purpose behind what you do? What do you think of yourself? Do you value yourself? Do you consider yourself to be important, not in the sense of other people think you're wonderful, marvelous, and fantastic, but important in the sense of your life matters, what you think matters, what you say matters, what you do matters, second by second, we could say. And this is really what accountability is all about. Now, there's a lot of people who do not expect to be held accountable. And one of the reasons is because they are not aware about the philosophy of karma. Another is they are not aware that there is a higher being, a higher power who is inescapable, and that you cannot just make excuses and get away with it. There are people who have a big ego, and a big ego means someone who desires power, money, fame, recognition, and they do whatever they think is going to cause others to think that they are wonderful and marvelous. And then they may do other things which they hide, which are not so good, or which they deny. And there is this word deniability. It's a very strange idea when you think of it from the angle of karma philosophy, but it's very common in the world of today, especially in the political arena. If a person wants to do something which is apparently good for them, but which is illegal or immoral, if they can manage to describe it in such a way that they can deny that they did it and indicate or prove to their satisfaction, or nobody can prove otherwise, then they can get away with it. And this is called deniability. But from the angle of spirituality, a person who's in denial will not get away with it. And deniability doesn't protect you from anything. And so a person who is operating in that way will all of a sudden come in front of the consequences of their actions, which they will not be able to avoid. And they will lose face, they will be caught up in shame, guilt, all of these things, because they thought they could get away with it. And they didn't understand that they will be sooner or later called to account. The philosophy of karma is so useful, so valuable, that it would be really very, very beneficial if everyone would be adequately knowledgeable about it and aware of it in terms of the nuances, the subtleties. Of course, you can approach it in a simplistic way, but that won't get you very far. You have to understand the depth, the subtleties, the intentions of your activities, the circumstances, the mitigating circumstances. All these things have to be taken into account. And so it takes a person who's really very watchful over themselves and very aware about the games that get played around them. Because if you get caught in someone's trap, you're still accountable. You should have paid attention. You should have noticed and not got caught in the trap. So a person who really wants to move forward spiritually also needs to be very well experienced in life. And of course, as I said before, you remain very aware that at every step, you live your life in the consciousness of being together with the Supreme Being. And this is also called remembrance. So when you are very aware of your value to your own self, and when you're also very aware of your relationship with the Supreme Being, this will help you very much at every step to be much more aware than you would otherwise be. And it helps you very much to do the right thing at the right time. And you also have to be very quick. Quick because circumstances come up suddenly, and you have to be able to decide very quickly what you're going to do, what's going on, what are the games that people are playing, what are the realities, what are the illusions, what are the delusions. And you need to have a very good power of discernment or discrimination to be able to identify rapidly what's going on in any given situation, so that the action you take is correct, because you are evaluated on each one of these things. So accountability is a little bit like understanding laws, not just only the laws of karma, but there are other laws as well. There are social laws, there are customs, there are people's sensitivities, there are ways of doing things that are better than other ways of doing things, even though all the ways are morally right, but there are ways of doing it better, taking into consideration people's sensitivities, the protocols of regard and respect, and maintaining good relationships over a long period of time. You also have to evaluate and make decisions about what are your red lines. Red lines means what lines will you not cross. And there are many situations where people around you will require you to cross your red lines. That means they will require you to go against your conscience, to go against your principles, And if you don't, then they will make you pay very heavily. And maybe you will get excluded. Maybe people will say bad things about you, character assassination, defamation, lies, many things like this will happen to you if you stick to your own principles, and other people want you to be used by them for their advantage, and you say, no, I won't do that. And this is again a sense of accountability. And there, it's not necessarily accountability to anybody else, but there it's accountability to yourself. And so you may be a person who will not betray the self. You have certain principles that you live by, and you have red lines around those principles, and you will not go against that at any cost. And maybe the cost is very high, but you still will not betray yourself, because eventually what people will do or against you or whatever is very small, at least in my opinion, it's very small in comparison with betraying yourself, betraying your principles, or betraying your relationship with God. You would rather take the consequences of someone's displeasure than to go against your own self. And this is because, especially when you're studying spirituality, you do have this awareness that I will live with myself forever. Other people, they come and go, but I will always be with me. And I like to have a clean, clear conscience. So if I betray myself, that's a big black mark on my conscience, which will stay there forever. That's not worth it to me. Someone else may get very distressed and disturbed and irritated if I do not toe their line, but they are here today, gone tomorrow. And I am not here today, gone tomorrow. I'm here all the time with me. And I think this is a very important awareness that I keep for myself, that I will always be with me. And when you want to have a good relationship with the Supreme Being, you have to be true to yourself, true to the Supreme Being, true to your purpose of life, your principles of life. And even if you have to lose opportunities or you have to lose relationships, eventually you will stick to what you stand for, what your values are. And so it is that some people, they do get vilified even until death, and maybe quite some time after their death, some biographer may write about them and set the record straight. And this does happen, so that you get to understand that no matter what, the truth will come through sooner or later. And so I think this value of accountability, this expecting to be held accountable and living your life according to, especially you're accountable to your own self, because your own self is, I think, in that sense, more important than anybody else, because the other people come and go. You do not. You're always with yourself. And your relationship with the divine is also a permanent thing. And if you think about yourself as a spiritual being, you think about yourself as an eternal soul, you think about endlessness of existence, that also makes you very solid in your power to maintain this, what you consider the truth, and that you will not go against yourself for anything. Now, sometimes you get into very tricky situations, and these are connected with probably the most important one is attachment. And there are very few people in this world who do not have attachments. And if somebody wants you to do something that you don't want to do because it's not your principle, they may threaten someone that you're attached to. And your attachment may be more powerful than your principle. And in that case, you may go against your principle because of that attachment. And this happens very often in political situations where a person will betray in order to save a relative, a loved one, from assassination or something like this. This does happen, and we live in a world which, in Dr. Manoj's poem, he mentioned about how people relate to each other with hostility, and this is the period of time we're living in at the moment. There's a lot of hostility. There's a lot of violence, and when you are in front of violence or threatened with violence, or someone you love is threatened with violence, then this can be used to turn you away from your principles, from your values. And so spiritual practice can help you in this. And you will get tested. It all depends on what level of truth, what level of independence, what level of accountability you are going for. And this is very individual. Think about your professional situation for a moment. People with professional responsibilities have to fulfill those responsibilities, and if they don't fulfill them, it could cause a lot of problems for another person. Particularly, people are suffering from health issues, physical health issues, mental health issues. And so the person who is the medical doctor or surgeon or therapist, they have a big responsibility to get their diagnosis right and make sure that their procedures are right. But there are some things that, everybody's human, people make mistakes. You can make a genuine mistake, which may or may not be able to be corrected. But if a person is a little negligent, and then a big mistake happens, then they will be called to account. Maybe some legal court case may be taken against them if the person who experienced damage has sufficient evidence. You see, this is an example of where you will be called to account through the court system. It happens in war. There's a lot of wars going on at the moment. There are rules of engagement. And when there is a war situation, everything is chaotic. And a lot of people do things which are war crimes. And at that time, they don't think about it in the frenzy of violence in the battlefield. But later on, yes, they will be held to account, and there are court cases at the end of a war which challenged the war criminals. And a lot of things happen that nobody can get any respite from. The person who wronged you may get away with it, and then you feel betrayed, you feel cheated, but yet sooner or later, according to the philosophy of karma, everything will be balanced out. And there are other things that are part of the philosophy of karma, which is difficult for people to handle, but I will bring this up anyway. And that is that something quite bad may happen to you, which you feel is a betrayal, and that your trust has been inappropriately wronged. And it's because you actually are in debt to that person and you owe them. And this is a karmic return going on. And this is something that most people are quite unable to detect. But one thing that is there when you do a spiritual practice and a spiritual study is your ability to detect when a karmic return is happening and that you are required to pay in some circumstance, and you recognize it, then you accept and you let it be, because the account has been balanced by that situation. But it's very, very rare for a person to be able to detect it. But again, a person who is studying these things in a very intensive way is actually much more accountable than someone who isn't, someone who doesn't know these details. And so the person who is studying spirituality, practicing spirituality, they are much more accountable than those who aren't, because they know better. And in any matter of being called to account, this will come up. You know better. What did you do? Why did you do this? You know better. Therefore, the payment that you pay will be much higher than someone who did something because they didn't know better. And so I think that for anyone who is in the practice of Raj Yoga, in the practice of spirituality, the calling to account will be at a much higher level than anybody else. And so that means you need to be really very careful about what you're doing and why you're doing what you're doing, because you know, in a sense, the spotlight is on you, the eyes are on you, and if you go against what you stand for, what you claim that you stand for, then people will really be heavily against you, because you have betrayed them. You've betrayed yourself, but you've betrayed others who trusted you. And that is also quite a heavy burden on someone who does that. So I've been talking so far about how you handle these things from a more serious point of view as somebody who is well versed in spirituality and karma philosophy and all of this. But how about someone who is not particularly well versed in these things, someone who is not studying and practicing spirituality, but just a basic person who is trying to live a good life. Definitely the most reliable thing that you have is your conscience. And this is why there's a deep connection between following your conscience and expecting to be held accountable. From my angle, I consider that everyone is born with a conscience. Maybe it doesn't get activated until you reach a certain age, but maybe by the time you were, I don't know, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, your conscience is operational and you know the difference. Partly you know because of how you're raised. Not everybody is raised well. Many people are raised in dysfunctional families where everything is very morally unclear, fuzzy. There's hypocrisy, there's double standards, there's violence, there's many things going on which mess up a person's moral compass. But I think behind that, there is a conscience. And if you just take time to sit quiet with yourself and consult your conscience, I think it is the most reliable of all instruments that are part of the consciousness. And so I would say just listen to the voice of conscience, and as far as possible, always follow it, because it really is reliable. And what is also the case is that when you deliberately go against your conscience for any reason, maybe because of fear, maybe because of anger, whatever the reason is, but when you go against your conscience, it loses functionality. And then when your conscience doesn't talk to you anymore, then you have to rely on other people, and who are not necessarily going to give you very good advice. So I think that even for someone who doesn't have much in the way of spiritual education or anything like that, just simply to follow the voice of conscience is a really good guide. And the voice of conscience is very quiet, and it doesn't necessarily speak up. Sometimes it's just a feeling. Sometimes you get a little signal when you're about to do something which says, I don't think you should do that. Sometimes it comes when you're in the middle of doing something. So stop right now, stop. Sometimes you get it when it's too late. You've already done, and then you say, oh, that wasn't right, was it? But you already did it. And this is an indication of a conscience that is not functioning so well. What you want, I would suggest, is to practice, to consult your conscience a lot, because I think probably a lot of people, normal people, go against their conscience 6, 7, 8 times a day, and every day. And so conscience is quite fuzzy, quite rusty, and it's a matter of, can you repair it? And I think you can. Just decide for yourself, okay, now what I'm going to do is follow the voice of my conscience as far as I can, listen to it, pay attention to it, try to operate with my conscience. Then it will start to get activated, it'll start to talk to you well, evaluate what you've done. Say, a good practice is the end of every day, just take a look, okay, what did you do? How do you feel about it? Do you like what you did? Do you feel a little uncomfortable about something you did? and say to yourself, oh, I shouldn't have done that. I'm not going to do that again. This is a very good way to refine your sensitivity to right and wrong, because it's like an intuition or an instinct. And I think when you do something like this, you really start to be much more in your sense of self-respect and much more able to hold your own when other people try to make you do something you don't want to do, either by force or by tempting you or something like this. Be with your conscience, because it's just so important to realize that other people, when they want you to do something you don't want to do, they're just people, and it doesn't matter if you offend them. Take care of yourself, definitely, and make sure that you are, as far as possible, becoming more and more true to yourself. And eventually people will respect that and honor that. So accountability is, I think, a very interesting value. Most people have a lot of room for improvement. All of us, I think, have a lot of room for improvement, but not everybody knows how to do that. So I think that when you start really listening to your conscience and thinking of yourself as someone who expects to be held accountable for what you do, this means that you're on the way to wisdom. And wisdom, not everybody is interested in becoming wise or achieving wisdom, but it's a very, very valuable thing. And I think wisdom and listening to the conscience and expecting to be held accountable, these things go hand in hand. And the overall impact of it is that you become a valuable person. And valuable means other people consider you very valuable, and they honor you, and they love you, and they feel good when you're around. And this is a very, I think, a very good way to live. So anyway, I will stop there. I think I've covered quite a lot of different areas in regard to accountability. There may be some more that you want to know about, but I think that that would be good for the moment. So thank you very much for your kind attention.
Yeah. So thank you so much. And what I could gather is you spoke a lot about karmic accounts, and I think we should be accountable for our karmic accounts. And you spoke also a lot about conscience. So the first question is, what is the difference between conscience and consciousness?
Well, consciousness means that you're aware that you're alive, and you can feel and think and do things. You're conscious. You could be unconscious, then you wouldn't be aware. You could be in coma, which is way less aware. You could be dead. But consciousness is that you're aware that you exist, and you're aware of what's going on around you. This would be called consciousness. And then there are many different elements to consciousness. There's feeling, there's decision-making, etc. And conscience is a part of what is called the intellect. Conscience is an internal instrument of consciousness which lets you know whether something is true or false, right or wrong. And it helps you to decide what to do and make sure that what you're doing is correct. And so it's very connected with karma philosophy as well.
Right. And as you rightly said, I was just going to ask you, but you said it that the conscience is the function of the intellect. And in our spiritual class here at the Brahma Kumaris in Raj Yoga, the Supreme Being tells us about stone intellect, whereby my conscience, it stops biting me, stops pricking me, and they say that you have throttled your conscience, and therefore you don't feel accountable for anything in life. So, how does one who is not practicing Raj Yoga, or maybe for both ways, one who's practicing Raj Yoga and one who's not knowing about Raj Yoga, how do they, what are the steps to develop accountability so that your intellect starts becoming more soft and you start realizing that yes, you need to be accountable for things?
Well, I look at it, I don't look at it as a soft intellect being a good thing. I look at a soft intellect being rather a bad thing. So a stone intellect is one which cannot see clearly. A stone intellect means opaque and hard. So, but stone is more to do with opacity than hardness. And the opposite of a stone intellect is a diamond intellect. And diamond is absolutely clear. And both the stone and the diamond are pretty hard. But the diamond you see clearly. And the stone, you just don't see what the problem is, or you don't see what's wrong with doing something. And so to me, it's more to do with getting clear. And getting clear has to do with conscience being functional. You see, there is an expression, killing the conscience. And somebody who kills their conscience is that they agree to do things that are against their conscience. And this, in my terminology, is called they agree to get corrupted. And so when a person is corrupt, they will do wrong because they get advantage from it, a short-term advantage. But they will not get it that there's a high price to pay. They just don't see it. So I look at the stone as you don't get it, you don't see it, you're opaque, you cannot see clearly. And the conscience, I was talking about having to repair the conscience, because you see, unless you're really strong, and there are not that many people who are that strong to resist all the different ways in which different people try to corrupt you. See, corruption is done by someone in a position of power getting someone who's not in a position of power to do something against their conscience under some threat. And in that way, they corrupt that person, and then they have power over that person, and they can use that person to get their work done that they don't want to do themselves, but which they're nevertheless accountable for. And so it's a big thing to be able to remain clean and not get corrupted. You have to be very strong for that, very strong.
Yeah, thank you. So there's a question which is quite long. I'll read it. If a person has committed a mistake, realized and has already apologized for it, but the person is still feeling guilty or thinking that there can be some consequences for which he would be held accountable, maybe in the near future. So what could be done in this case by this person so that everything falls in place?
Answer that question without full details. I'm basically a lawyer, so you have to give me all the details. Otherwise, it becomes a hypothetical question, because it could be a big thing, a small thing. Somebody murdered somebody, offended somebody. It could be anything, you see. And depending on what it is, you will get an answer, but without details, I can't really give an answer.
Fine, sure. So the person can send me the details if you want to share. Okay, I'll move on to the next question. You spoke about karmic accounts as well, because yes, accounts, accountability, all goes there. So the question is quite intriguing. Like, if I do something which is not right, and I am not feeling very good what I have done, whatever someone has done, how do I know that am I settling an old account or I'm creating a new account with someone?
You've got a lot of hypothetical questions there. And you see, it's very common for people not to give any details and to give me a question like this. You have to provide the details in order to get an intelligible answer, because you see, how do you know whether something's right or wrong? There are criteria. And when you are asking about a particular act, then you have to put that act against the criteria. The simplest kind of criteria are you, have you done an act which is based on the essential qualities of the soul, purity, peace, power, love, bliss, like that? If you've done an act based on something like that, that'll be a good act. But there's a huge spectrum between good actions and bad actions. And in the spectrum, there are different degrees of goodness and badness. And so you have to look at the action, because you see, people who have been raised in a certain way may feel very guilty about doing really small things, whereas somebody else who's raised in a different way, they will not feel that much guilty even about a big thing. So feeling guilty is not a criteria as to whether or not your action was good or bad. You either are guilty or you're not guilty. Feeling guilty is something that is created by ways in which people are raised, especially religion will tell you you should feel guilty if you do this, that, and the other, which may or may not be wrong, because different people have different ideas about what's right and wrong. So you need to have different criteria which are not based on someone trying to take control over somebody else or make a person feel diminished or enslave them or flatter them, or, you know, there's all these games that go on and create moral confusion from childhood onwards. And this is why in Raj Yoga we have a whole big study so that you can gradually come to understand what is right and wrong. And that takes time. And it also depends on your position, how much power you have, if you're disempowered, if you're an employer, an employee. There's so many variables that this is why I always say, okay, give me the details and then I can put it on the spectrum. And then you can see whether something is right or wrong, whether it's a settlement of karma or you're doing a negative karma, because without details, there's not enough information to give an intelligent answer.
Right. So as we speak, that person has mentioned in the chat box that it's a daughter-in-law and a mother-in-law conversation. So the daughter-in-law is saying that my mother-in-law really, she doesn't treat me very well. And now that I have started doing Raj Yoga, I know that it is my karmic account that I am, that's the reason I am in this house. So now what can I do? And what is she? She is sort of constantly defaming me, demeaning me in front of my husband. So, so is she creating a new account with me? And how do I mean, how do I know she's creating a new one with me? That's the question.
Okay, there's still more details, because you have to decide, is this mother-in-law attached to her son. Because if she is, then she will feel jealous of the daughter-in-law. And then that's not your karmic account at all. That's just your mother-in-law's jealousy. And there you are in a situation. It may or it may not be. You see, there's so many things to take into consideration. There's other things about how many women are treated badly by their mother-in-law. And then when they grow up and they get a daughter-in-law, they give as good as they got. And that's also not your karmic account, that's their karmic account. And when you are married into a family, you're married not just only to one member of the family, you're married to all of the members of the family, and you have to navigate your way and get them to recognize your value. And they may be testing you and giving you a hard time on purpose because of various preconceptions and so on and so on. It's very complicated. I don't know if you've read the Manu Smriti, but if you want to understand these complications, it's quite a good thing to read. It's a very long, detailed book, and it helps you to understand why people behave strangely, because it talks a lot about things which from my angle would be preconceptions, but from their angle would be realities. And so again, you're looking at the social customs, the prevailing social attitudes, and it's complicated. And so when you study Raj Yoga, which you said you do, don't just take it in a simplistic way, because simplistic Raj Yoga is not really Raj Yoga. You have to consult your conscience. If your mother-in-law is constantly defaming you and blah, 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 all of these things, she wants to know whether she can make you upset. So then it's up to you whether you get upset or not. And so you can consider these things as tests rather than karmic accounts, because the chances are you'll not get it right if you think it's a karmic account. But if you think it's a test, then you will look at your strength, look at how you need to increase certain capabilities, self-respect, independence, emotional independence, and all of these things. And then you can use the circumstances to your advantage. If you think it's a karmic account, you'll use the circumstance to your disadvantage, and that will not be very wise.
Yes, so that's a wonderful way that consider those to be your test papers rather than considering them to be karmic accounts. Okay, so there's another question which you spoke about attachment, and someone's asking that I am not attached, but I have detached attachment. So what does that mean?
That means you are attached.
So can we practice detached attachment?
No.
No, okay. Fine, so that's a plain no. Right.
That's called self-deception.
Right. Okay. So, and do you want to just explain, because people really don't understand the concept of detachment. They say spirituality teaches you detachment and then you become very insensitive towards people. But I'm sure you will agree, detachment is not insensitivity. So do you want to throw some light on this?
Yeah, most people interpret the word detachment to mean dissociation. And dissociation is very unhealthy, and this is what makes you unfeeling. Detachment is very subtle. Detachment involves feeling everything intensely, but not being upset by it. And not the feelings that are raised within you in any particular situation, you will not act according to those feelings. You'll act according to what you know. That's detachment.
Okay. We'll move on to another domain of questions. It's about dealing with adolescents, difficult teenagers. So one of the mothers asking that I have a difficult teenager at home, and how do I make him feel accountable for what he's doing? He's doing something wrong which I'm not liking. She's not mentioned what wrong he's doing, so I'm sorry, I have no specific details. But how do we make sure that this is called the Gen Z, the Generation Z now? How do you make them feel accountable for things?
Well, you don't make them feel accountable, you hold them to account. And so what happens is you have to have laws, and you have to discuss with your difficult teenager. Difficult teenager means somebody who's clever and somebody who's got guts and who's likely to make it in life, because teenagers are by definition difficult if they're strong. And so don't worry about difficult teenagers. But what you need to do is understand that a teenager is someone who is still partly a child, but also an adult. And it's very difficult to be a teenager because you're tossing in between moments of being a child and moments of being an adult. And you have to try to exert your strength and exert your power in the family environment, because this is how you grow up. You see, the family environment is safe. If you try doing that out in the world, they may take you out. In the family, they love you, so they won't. So the difficult teenager wants to go out and stay out all night, wants to experiment with all sorts of things that the parents don't want them to. But you need to sit down with them and talk to them, not as children, but talk to them as somebody who is in the process of becoming an adult. So talk to the teenager as an equal, and don't talk down to the teenager, because the teenager can't stand that. I need to listen to the teenager and try to understand what that child, what that young adult is dealing with, because their body is changing, hormones are changing, all sorts of things are going on. And you try and make that teenager remain a child, that will damage that person enormously. So, yeah, be careful about not doing that.
Yeah, another interesting question is, the person is saying, I recently started my journey on Raj Yoga, practicing meditation, getting connected to God, but I'm not able to develop a relationship, a loving relationship, particularly with God, because I know that God punishes for our sins and we are held accountable. Whatever we do, God punishes us for that. So I think these conceptions need to be out, that God punishes us, because otherwise we won't be able to develop a relationship. Do you want to throw a light on that about?
Yeah, God is very clear. He doesn't punish anybody for their sins. Your sins, if you do any sins, you will pay for them, because it's the law of karma. It doesn't have anything to do with God. He knows the law of karma. He will explain it to you, and then it plays out. He has to be a detached observer. But you see, who says that God punishes people for their sins? That's the religions say that. You see, and they don't really know too much about God. So they say that God is the law of karma. He's not. He says, I'm not the law of karma. I know the law of karma. And if you do any sins, it doesn't require God for you to get to pay for them. That happens automatically. It's like the laws of physics, no difference. If you drop an apple from a tree top, it will fall at 32 feet per second, and the law of karma is similar, you see. So you need to understand that God as described by the religions is not the same as God as described by himself. And so you need to go a little further in your study of Raj Yoga. And in Raj Yoga, we have something which is called the Murlis. This is the study that we do. And this is God talking to us about himself. And he usually starts every Murli saying, sweet child or sweet children, be in my remembrance, consider yourself as a soul. You are very dear to me. You got yourself into a mess because the effect of going through time weakened you. If you do any negative karma, it's because you're weak, not because you're bad. So if you remember me, you will be able to get the strength so that you can follow your conscience and do what is right. And so he teaches like that.
Yes, wonderful. We have 5 more minutes. Hope that's okay. We'll take a few more questions. This is an interesting question. I think it's come from a youth. And I think people are going through this a lot. Why does physical and emotional attraction towards the same gender person happen?
Well, it happens because it happens. You may be attracted to the opposite gender, or you may be attracted to the same gender. That's either way it happens. And it's not that, I mean, the thing about it is that the prevailing social attitudes tell you it's wrong. And then you say, well, it's wrong, then why is it happening? And then nobody can have an answer for you except to tell you it's wrong. So that's people. But, every soul has the same number of births in male and female gender. Now, you may have a deep connection with someone who is in the same gender as you, or you may have a deep connection with someone who's in an opposite gender as you. And at the moment, we have come to the end of the cycle in which all the karmic accounts and attractions, repulsions, etc., are coming up for settlement full on, because it's the end of this karmic cycle or the time cycle. And so because of that, you can say that's why it's going on, and then you have to decide what you want to do about it. It's up to you.
Okay, I'm sure you will answer this elaborately, and it's a big question. I'm in a joint family with my husband, having brother with their kids, and they are terribly opposite to my sanskars because they spend so much unnecessarily. And I am in a government job, and my earnings also go into his business. So due to some tough situations at times, I can't stop them, but I just surrender to Baba. And Baba means obviously, so she's into knowledge, and Baba means supreme being God. We call lovingly Baba for those who are new ones to this concept. And she says, I surrender to the supreme and give a lot of shubhana, that is pure wishes to them, and respect whatever they are doing. But I'm sort of spending my money and giving them. So whether I'm right, I am accountable jointly for their actions. Also, like, because they're using my money for that business as well. What is this okay? Will I be accountable for their actions? I'm sure she will.
Well, it's a difficult one. And what you need to do is sit down with them and say, okay, I am in a joint family with you. I have a government job. I have a limited amount of money, and I'm getting distressed because you are spending this money in a way that I feel is excessive. Now, can we discuss it? You see, because they need to know that you feel that they're being excessive, because maybe they're used to a large amount of money and you're used to a small amount of money, and they don't think about what they're doing in relation to somebody who's not used to spending like that. You need to be able to talk about it. Talk about your feelings, not talk about what they should or shouldn't do, but just say you're not used to this and you're feeling uncomfortable about it. Can we talk about it so that you are asking them to let you know how they feel about not valuing your contribution, which is basically what you're saying.
Right. So I'll take, in the interest of time, I'll take this last question. Okay. Yeah. So the question is quite interesting, that I'm not able to identify myself, my complete form being Lakshmi Narayan. I'm a Christian, basically, she's saying. So can my supreme form be Adam and Eve? And can you throw some light on this?
Interesting. Yeah, that's interesting. Okay, you're a Christian and you're studying Gyan. The Christian image of Adam and Eve, they don't really show Adam and Eve until they've fallen out of paradise. They don't really show them in paradise. And you can think about Lakshmi and Narayan as another name for Adam and Eve who, before they fell out of paradise, because these words, Lakshmi and Narayan, are not in the Christian vocabulary, that's all. But the idea of the first man and first woman going to paradise, being in paradise, corresponds to the Golden Age and Silver Age, and then falling out of paradise corresponds to the beginning of the Copper Age. But when it comes to Adi Dev and Adi Devi, which is very often described as the first man and the first woman, this refers to the confluence age. So what you can do is think of yourself as, okay, I'm a Christian. I'm going to take whatever in the study and practice of Raj Yoga works for me, and the rest of it, just leave it and maybe come back to it later on. But for the time being, work with those aspects that speak to you. That's the best way.
Yeah. So thank you so much. And I think in the interest of time, I would take this. I'm sorry, I'm taking as one more last question. It's an interesting question, very closely related to accountability. So this person is saying that we all are responsible for climate change. So we are accountable, all of us. But are each one of us also accountable for the wars which are happening in different countries, though we are not staying in those countries?
Well, we're not accountable for climate change, as the climate change people tell us that, but actually climate is changing whether we like it or not, because at the end of the time cycle, the climate changes. Whether you do anything good or bad or indifferent, it doesn't actually make that much difference. And of course, the climate change activists talk about a carbon footprint and various things you should be recycling and so on. This is because people are aware that climate change is something that you can't avoid, and that it's going to be really, really difficult in terms of weather and food and all these things. And the reality is, nobody can stop it, because climate change is because of time. There are a few things that people have done which damages the environment, but climate change itself is much bigger than that. And every so often, there was an ice age. There's not an ice age right now. Climate change happens every few thousand years, and it's happening now. And the difficult thing is we have to get through it, because it's messing up the weather. And wars are also something that is, in a sense, destined. You cannot take responsibility for things that are outside your own personal domain. You can really just take responsibility for yourself. I mean, if you personally want to have a good relationship with nature, then make sure that in your life you do not abuse nature. So, for example, in Raj Yoga, we are vegetarian. This is better for nature, better for the animals. We don't need to eat all sorts of other people. Be thrifty, be attentive, do that because that's your karma with nature. But you can't take responsibility for something that's outside your range.
Right, wonderful. Thank you so much. So climate change wars is all inevitable. So let's not wait because someone just wrote, when will the war end? So let's not wait for the dates. Let's concentrate on our journey on self-transformation. And some few thousand years, they're saying, is it 5,000 years? I'll say contact the Raj Yoga Center. Obviously, it is 5,000 years for more details. So we'll just invite Sister Claudia now for the vote of thanks. Over to you, Sister Claudia. Thank you.
Thank you very much, dear Sister Denise. You know, I quite like one point when we talk. I always try to make sure that I follow my conscience. And I train myself on that because I could see sometime if I did not follow, things was not right. But sometimes people, even without us asking, they come with advice. And they want us to follow them against our conscience, which is from that time I'm quite strong, and sometimes they don't like it because I'm strong. But as I like to, when you talk about this, yeah, just think they're just people. That's a quite easy way to think. And then do not betray myself. It's I quite like these 2 points because I sometimes think, oh, am I doing right or not? So, but yes, you just answer my question. Thank you very much. Thank you many, many times. Thank you for being with us today.
So thank you so much. And before we proceed with the closing meditation, over to Sister Anu for the announcements and the photograph. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for the wonderful, wonderful talk and really making us to think and go deeper. Thank you, Sister Denise. So, yeah, let's look at our upcoming program. So, we'll continue on accountability. Maybe we can continue from this moment, whatever we heard actually. How am I doing for myself? Being accountable. So, next week, November 16th, the time will be half an hour before. So, it would be really early, 6:30 a.m. The workshop will begin for West Coast, US, Canada, in order to accommodate India so that the workshop will finish by 10 p.m. in India. So 8 p.m. India time, 6:30 a.m. West Coast, US, Canada, and accordingly in other places. Next week, we have the workshop. First hour will be the experiential exercises. And then second hour, we'll have Sister Kinnari from Guyana, Brahma Kumaris. So will take us through further insight into this value, virtue, accountability, and meditations. Please join us then. We'll have our silence retreat in the middle of this month that we planned last week, but due to all Diwali celebrations and a lot of programs, we had to reschedule. So it is happening next week. So we'll let you know it is on prosperity that in silence we'll experience. This is for BK students, or it is based on Brahma Kumaris teachings, but you are all welcome to join. It's open for everyone. So come and join and experience in silence how it goes. And the next episode 103, is on sensitivity. So after this brief topic on accountability, I think this is a good one to explore. In Hindi, Samvedanshilata. For that, we'll have Sister Manda from UK. She's a Senior Raj Yoga teacher there. It's happening 2 weeks after, 23rd November. The time is 7 a.m., same as today. So from now on, there's a little bit time difference for workshop beginning time and the program beginning time. So please join us then. This is our calendar. Always we create it and you get it. We share it in the emails. For more information, check us out on our websites. That's vihasa.in and vancouver.brahmakumaris.ca. All the videos, including today's, you'll find on the YouTube channels as well as on our episode playlist, as you can see. So thank you. Thank you, everyone, for being here. And as we always do also, we take a photo to make this moment memorable. So want to be in the photo, please switch on your video. We'll remember this empowering moment with Sister Denise and become accountable for the self, and that's where the life changes. Tapping onto our inner conscience. So thank you so much, Sister Denise. Do you, Manoj Bhai, for the next person?
Yeah, so we'll proceed with the closing, and it will be a commentary, a little bit guided meditation. If that's okay, yeah.
Om Shanti. Take a moment to turn your attention within. And be conscious of the self as a being of light who is aware, clear, that whatever I do corresponds to who I am. I may make a mistake by mistake, and I have to let that go and do what I can to put it right. But I have boundaries, red lines. I will not allow myself to be coerced into doing something that is against my conscience. I cannot blame somebody and say, this person made me do it. No. They may try to make me do it, but I will not do it if it's against my conscience. I am accountable for what I do. Everything I do comes from my heart, my being, my essence. I am a pure, peaceful, powerful, and loving being of light. And what I do comes from that space. The world is full of complications, and I have to be a detached observer. But for myself, I take charge and am responsible for what I do and who I am. I take each step with care and in love and remembrance of the Supreme Father, Teacher, as I move forward on my journey towards wisdom. Om Shanti. Thank you.
Thank you once again so much for your beautiful insights and going to the depth of accountability.
Thank you for being with us.
Thank you. See you again. See you everyone. Bye now.